In Tennessee, Republican lawmakers have approved a new congressional map that splits up the state's sole majority black district and could help the GOP keep control of Congress in the midterms. The new map is in response to last week's decision by the US Supreme Court that gutted the landmark Voting Rights Act. It was the latest in a string of contentious 6-3 rulings by the High Court, with the Conservatives being in the majority. Presidential immunity, abortion, affirmative action, gender-affirming care. As the US senators are considering a number of President Trump's judicial and law officer nominees. During a recent confirmation hearing, a top Democrat grilled one of the president's picks.
Mr. Mark, is President Trump eligible to run for president again in 2028?
Senator, without considering all the facts and looking at everything, depending on what the situation is, this to me strikes as more of a hypothetical of something that could be.
It's not a hypothetical. Has President Trump been elected president twice?
President Trump has been certified the President of the United States 2 times.
Is he eligible to run for a 3rd term under our Constitution?
I would have to review the
All I
actual
need to tell
wording
you
of
is
it.
the language of the constitutional amendment that makes it clear that no, he is not eligible to run for a 3rd term. Anybody else brave enough to say that the Constitution of the United States prevents President Trump from seeking a 3rd term?
Jeffrey Toobin, former assistant US attorney, he joins me. Jeffrey, you wrote a New York Times op-ed called Trump's Shockingly Unqualified US Attorney Picks. And essentially, these are people who've never, they may be lawyers, but they've never done a criminal case and they're being US attorneys, which is a prosecutorial role. How shocked are you that these people have A, been put forward, and B, have the chutzpah to accept the nomination?
Well, I think, what's important for our international audience to understand is that even though this is the United States Department of Justice, the local law enforcement officials who are known as U.S. attorneys, who are in charge of prosecutions within a state, have enormous discretion about which cases to bring and whom to prosecute. So it's a really big deal who is the U.S. attorney in Wyoming, in North Carolina, and Alabama. And what's shocking about these nominees in those 3 states is that they have no qualifications except, to my eyes, loyalty to President Trump. And that's really the touchstone of what we've seen of this Department of Justice. It's loyalty to Trump over qualifications and experience.
But the failure in the system, Jeffrey, is the checks and balances of what we just heard then in Congress. I mean, you could arguably say, look, the president's going to have a good run at it, but it's really other people not doing their jobs.
Well, one of the big stories of these past year and a half, of President Trump's 2nd term, is the absolute failure of the Republicans who control the Senate to exercise any sort of check and balance as the Constitution requires them to do. Donald Trump has been able to nominate anyone he wants for any job, whether it's Robert Kennedy to run Health and Human Services or judges or U.S. attorneys. This Senate has proved to be a rubber stamp, and the Democrats, as in the clip you played, can make nominees look bad, but they don't have the votes to stop anyone.
On the court itself, these 6-3 decisions, they're always on the most controversial, or if you will, social touchstones and touch points in a sense. But the reality is that most of the cases are either unanimous or there is quite a lot of crossover between. But the big cases get this 6-3 and it creates an impression of judicial bias.
But I think the impression is not wrong. I mean, these cases are big for a reason, because they are enormously consequential to how, to how Americans live their lives, whether they have the right to get an abortion, whether they have a right to marry the person they love. I mean, these are big deal issues. Yes, it is true that in many cases, the court is either unanimous or close to it. But these political divisions on the court are real, and they reflect political divisions in the country.
Right, but I guess what I'm forcing down the road of is that they're not making the judges in the conservative wing, maybe most of them, let's say, are not making those decisions because they want to vote for Trump. It's because they agree with that conservative unitary government philosophy that he's putting forward. Or am I sort of going too far here?
Well, Richard, you are putting your finger on the great question that all of us who cover the Supreme Court ask ourselves and try to figure out is how much are what the justice is doing out of genuine ideological and philosophical belief, and how much of it is simple partisanship. I don't think that answer can be arrived at simply, but I don't think you can write off simple partisanship, at least as part of the justification for what we see from the Supreme Court.
Bearing in mind that there are many of them are young-ish and will be there for years to come because they're lifetime appointments. What do you favour as the solution? Obviously, some have suggested increasing the number, changing the terms if that were possible. What is your preference to actually deal with this?
Term limits, 18 years. That there is a proposal that's been out there for a long time, which would have two justices turn over every 2 years. So every president would get 2 appointments for during each presidential term, and 18 years to me is plenty of time. Our Constitution was written in the 18th century when people weren't expected to live as long as they do now. So the idea that 30 and even 40-year terms become routine on the court is really, I think, a mistake. But it would take a constitutional amendment to change it.
Which would, you and I stand more chance of getting to the moon than that at the moment. But
that's true. But you asked me.
I did. I did. But then, all right, let's continue down in the world of make believe in a sense. Assuming you go for 18 years and you can get it through, would you be in favour of grandfathering in the existing lot? Because if you go for an 18-year limit overnight, you're basically going to wipe out a good number of them.
Yeah, you would have to grandfather in. And I think it would be unconstitutional to force out the nominees who've been confirmed under one set of rules to force them out under a different set of rules. So, yes, the current group is not going anywhere.
Are you surprised? My producer's shouting at me. We've got to finish, but I just want to get your thoughts. Are you surprised that Clarence Thomas? I covered the whole thing when his hearing and all those years ago. The longest-serving member of the bench. He ain't going. Doesn't seem like he's going anywhere anytime soon.
Absolutely not. He's having the time of his life because his side is winning. He spent a long time in the wilderness when the moderates and even the liberals had a chance of winning cases. Now, with 6-3 conservative majority, Thomas has the chance to write majority opinions, has the chance to make the law of the land, views that seemed outlandish when he was appointed in 1991.
I'm so glad we had you, Jeffrey. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All righty, Richard.